Hello teacher, good afternoon. My name is Kelvin and this is my oral presentations. The first things that I'm going to talk about is a noun. What is noun? The noun in all English has different characteristics which are the declinations, gender, and strong and weak definitions. For example, in the declinations, nouns in all English are declined based on case, nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, and number singular and plural. Each nouns belong to one or several declarations, classes, emphasized in ending. So the noun is the word that is used in the sentences for identify the singular and the plural, and has a gender. What is genders? Nouns are recognized into three genders: masculine, feminine, and neutrals. The genders affect the form of the adjective and articles used with the nouns. Strong and weak declarations. Nouns can be classified as strong, weak, based on their declaration patterns. Strong nouns have a more complex set of ending, while weak nouns typically have simple endings. Grammar gender has in Indo-European language generally the gender of all English nouns is not dependent upon consideration of sex. Which means that when you refer to a grammar genders, it doesn't refer to a specific sex in the sentences. For example, when you use the all English, often the genders of all English nouns is quite illogical. Words like, for example, noisgan, girls, wife or wife, for example, bears, child, son, and seal, child, which we should expect to be feminine or masculine, are in fact neutral. For example, while workman, which means woman, is masculine because the second element of the compound is masculine. The simplify of modern English gender has already been pointed out as one of the chief accents of the language. How so this desirable change was brought about will be shown later. So we continue with the adjective. In the Old English, the adjective, an important feature of the Germanic language, is the development of word-form declarations of the adjective. For example, when the stem is short, the adjective ends in u in the nomination singular of the feminine and the motivated and accusative plural of neutral. All English, according by the definite article or similar word such as demonstrative or possessive pronouns. For example, the others are the weak declaration used when the noun is preserved by such as word. Through we have in all English good man, for example, the words good man in the New English you can say good mans, but say God a man, the good mans. The difference is the adjective has the strong syllable set for God a man. These the four are those of the nominative singular, masculine in the strong and weak declaration respectively. Well, right now we continue with the personal pronouns. In the personal pronoun in the Old English or in all languages is likely to preserve a fairly complex system of inflections. All English shows this tendency not only in having distinctive form for practically all genders, person and case, but also in preserving in additions to the ordinary two numbers, singular and plural, has set of form for two people or two things. The dual number Indo-European had separate form for the dual members in the verb as well, and this appears in Greek and to a certain extent in Gothic. In Old English, for example, and the distinctions between the dual and the plural was disappearing even from pronoun in Old English. Well, we continue with the verbs. This part of the verb is too extensive, for I'm going to talk very, very short, the most important part of the verb, because it's extends this part of the article. So the verb, the inflection of the verb is Germanic language is much simpler than it was in the European times. For example, a comparison of the Old English verb with the verb inflection of Greek or Latin will show how much has been lost. Old English distinguished only two simple tenses by inflection, the present and the past, and except for one word, it had no inflection form for the passive and in Latin or Greek. It recognized the indicative, subjective, and imperative modes and had the usually two numbers and three persons. For example, a particular feature of the Germanic language was the division of the verb in two great classes, the weak and the strong, often known in modern English as regular or irregular verb. These terms, which are so commonly employed in the modern grammar, are rather unfortunately because they suggest an irregularity in the strong verb that is more appearance than real. So in the Old English, the person who influenced the Old English divided the verbs into parts, which are a regular verb or irregular verb. For example, that in New English nowadays. Well, in vocabulary, to one unfamiliar with Old English, it might seem that a language which lacked the longer number of words borrowed from Latin and French that now form so important and part of our vocabulary will be somewhat limited in resources. One might think that Old English, while possessing adequate means to expressing for a free or simple everyday life, will be unable to make the fine distinctions that literally language is called upon to express. For example, the difference between the old vocabulary and the new vocabulary is that in the Old English the vocabulary has a Latin influence and has a lot of influence that changed through the times, that it became the language what we know right now. In self-explanation compound in the list of words given in the preceding paragraph, for example, are a considerable numbers that we call self-explanation compound. These are compound or two or more native words, those meaning in combination in either self-evidence or has been reacted clearly by association and usage. In modern English, greenhouse, rainwater, serving machine, one-way street, and coffee table book are explained of such words. Words of these characters are found in most languages, but the type in particular prevalent in Old English, as it in modern German, where in English today, for example, often have a borrowed word or a word made up of element derived from Latin Greek. German still prefers self-explanation compound. So exists a difference between Old and New English according to self-explanation compound. Because, for example, when you look the text, the different in some words, for example, in an Old English has a different kind of influence of other languages in the past. For example, I think that the Latins have some influence of that kind of words. In this part, for example, reflexive and suffix, prefix and suffix, has previously mentioned, a part of the flexibility of the Old English vocabulary comes from the generous use made of prefix and suffix to form new words from old words or to modify or extend the root idea. In this respect, it also replaces modern German. For example, in prefix, you use a word that you can add in the beginning of the word for make other words with another meaning. For example, in suffix, you can add other word in the final of the word for changing the meaning of that word or for extends that word. This grammar become to the Old English. Nowadays, in the New English, you can use it too. Well, finally, in the Old English syntax, one of the most obviously features of the syntax systems or styles in any language is the degree or which grammatically uncertain relationships are expressed by subordinated clauses. A high proportions of long sentences with subordinations has in the process of Edward Gibbon or Henry James or the poetry of John Milton. It is known as hypothetic styles, where shortest sentences and a highest proportion of principal clauses, has in the process of Ernest Hemingway. Is paradistic may also be interested as in Mature and Klinich has an example given my SOS Andrews. Right now we have an example of what Old English syntax is. For example, then I asked him, then he replied. They came to a place on the road. This stood a temple. There is living in the convent a certain monk. He was called Martin, he says. So we are here have a example in how Old English syntax is. According to the text, for example, those people that I mentioned here were the people who influenced the Old English in syntax. Thank you, teacher. This is my presentation.